a fantastic series of sessions, and it looks like we have another plenary speaker entering the studio now. Digital anthropologist, tech strategy alchemist, talent spacemaker, and next-gen collaborator, Lisa Smith. Welcome, and we're joined by Puneet as well. Hi, both.
Hi, Lisa.
Thank you.
So we had lots of interest and lots of questions from your session this morning. The QR code was blowing up. So one of the questions that we had from our delegates was, you were kind of describing it's important for leaders to be brave,
Yes.
to be vulnerable. How does kind of psychological safety kind of play a factor here, and culture in the workplace to allow for these traits?
Well, I think a couple things. I think when we talk about psychological safety, that's just sort of a very intentional acknowledgement that all things can be spoken about. And I think sometimes we think that's like a process or some, mechanic. It actually is just a simple acknowledgement that it's okay to admit that you've done something wrong. Because we don't know, we actually need to understand that. So you actually start to seek uncertainty. And if you're seeking uncertainty, you actually need to say, well, in order for me to understand that, how I can help you, you need to create an environment that invites that in. So that is how I would sort of encourage people to really think about what psychological safety is. It's really just a leader saying, look, because we don't know, I need to know everything that goes wrong, not the things that are going right. And that then is a function of psychological safety, because you're now saying they're actually asking me for the red things, not the green things on the paper, right? So I think that's sort of my view on that.
That is fantastic, and it makes so much sense, right? It's a big word, but actually it means something fairly simple, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had a client that they have these things called red talks.
Red talks.
Like, just red talks. Like, come in this meeting and talk about what's red.
Love
and if
that.
that doesn't set up psychological safety, I don't know what it is, because you're really saying, we know things exist. How might we actually solution those? We talk about impediments are not in the path, they are the path. So it's just a little bit of a mindset, right? It's back to mindset.
Bit of a shift, right?
It's a bit of a shift.
Fantastic.
Take those things out.
Super.
Well,
So I
what
guess
I'm really excited to learn about, so I know that you both, Puneet and Lisa, work together internally at Deloitte.
This is probably like the closest we've worked, like, physically, not been
Fantastic.
all virtual, right? So
It has been. Our whole relationship has been virtual.
Virtual. Well, tell us a bit more about what we're doing in the diversity and inclusion space at Deloitte.
Do you want to go first?
no, you
or-
go for it.
Well, I think a couple things. I think I had the pleasure of being invited to be our consulting sort of service line lead a couple of years ago now, right before the Black Action Plan started. And that really had a very different purpose, which was, we knew there was some really good work happening across our business. And we had someone changing out that role, and so I got an amazing note from Jackie and Puneet saying, would you mind taking that on? And I think one of the first big challenges we had is then moving into what we called Moving with Impact, which was like the first response to what happened to George Floyd's death. That became sort of our big pinnacle of like, how are we going to move this across the firm? So I would say the Black Action Plan, now what we call the Black Experience, is back to being a headliner and probably a pretty big focal point of the Ethnicity Council, along with maybe a shift in mindset that the Ethnicity Council isn't maybe just about steering anymore. It's probably a little more skin in the game, which is how are you accountable across all service lines in the business for ensuring that there's equal and consistent experiences, and then achieving things like our diversity targets. So I would say those are some headliners right now. We always focus on workability, which is our sort of headliner of diversity. And we have some big focuses on trans awareness, which is part of our LGBTQ+. And then I would say from a race awareness perspective, we've put the Black Action Plan, now known as the Black Experience, back headline, because the talent felt like there was still more work to do around that.
So tell us a little more about having diversity very visibly
Yes.
in the leadership of every organization. What's your thinking on that?
You mean as it relates to us getting more representation?
Us, and the wider world out there, right?
Yeah, I think a couple things. To be honest, there's probably a bit more uncomfortable conversations that need to happen around, first of all, the why. Like, I was our first Black partner in consulting. which is kind of crazy given how diverse I believe the UK and particularly London is, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm also not local, right? There's also another thing, right? I've relocated to the UK, but I think in that we've checked a box.
Yeah.
But even when I'm communicating to Puneet sometimes, I said, I actually need your sponsor. I just sent him an email a couple of weeks ago, and he asked me if I wanted to do something, and I said, thank you for thinking of me, because
That's
I
so
actually
nice.
need your sponsorship more now
Yeah.
than I did on the other side. And I think
It's fantastic to see that sponsorship. I'm going to have to cut us off there. We could talk about this for days and days. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for in the studio.